Real quick, how we doing tonight, guys and gals? Everybody's looking forward to talking to Gussy, as am I. Two quick announcements before we bring in my co-host and good friend, Jim McLaughlin. Ladies Night returns this Monday on CFN. CFN Live is going to be co-hosted with Yvonne Brown. Her guest this week, this special guest, Charlene LaValle. Charlene's going to walk us through some great tales and some of the topics that she enjoys talking about and writing about, from what I understand. So I look forward to that. Monday at 7 o'clock, Yvonne will be co-hosting with me and joining me, and we'll be introducing to our CFN community Charlene LaValle for the first time. And, of course, I can't let you forget the North Shore Tackle Contest giveaway is also going on. So make sure that if you have any North Shore swag, tackle, anything that you could show off in a picture with a fish and yourself, preferably yourself and a fish, will qualify. And there is no limit on how many entries that you can put in. So as many as you possibly can. Now, tonight's guest is no stranger to our fireside chats with Jim McLaughlin. He's been here in the past. It's been a while since we had a chance to speak to him. But before we do, let me introduce my co-host and good friend. There he is, Big Jim.
Yo.
How you doing, my friend?
Good, buddy, good.
Well, listen, I hope Gussy is able to hear us and speak with us. I know they're getting quite the snowstorm up that way tonight and tomorrow. 50 possible centimeters of snow. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it is a reality.
Yeah, it's always the way, and everybody will be going, "Oh, look at all the snow we got." Well, it's November and it's Canada. You know, it's a week, 3 days. Hey, it was 15 degrees in Kingston today. I was down in Kingston by the waterfront. All the people were walking all over the waterfront. There's guys fishing off the shore. There's guys out in bass boats zipping back and forth. There's sailboats. Everything's just, and then in, literally a couple of days here, it all goes to hell. So it's what it is.
We're getting rain, and we're on this side of the cold fronts, it seems, for the next little while. To our friends to our north and, of course, to our west, our prairie provinces are dealing with it already, and Northern Ontario is going to be battling it in the coming days. But, yeah, it is a reality. We just want you guys all to stay safe, have a seat, grab a drink, and sit back and, like Steve just mentioned, spend the next hour with us, as we are going to be talking to the great Canadian snow leopard.
Yeah, baby.
How did he get that name, Jim?
I think Dave Mercer gave it to him.
Just out of the blue. He just popped off. I mean, that's typical Dave. That is typical Dave Mercer. But
hey, if you want to see a side of Dave Mercer, if you want to bring tears to your eyes, and it happened to me this morning, go to Dave's Facebook page or YouTube channel, Dave Mercer Facts of Fishing, and look at the little memory he put up that he taped of himself talking about Aaron Martins. If you don't get a tear in your eye, you can unfriend me on Facebook. Then,
yeah.
No, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like I showed it to my wife this morning before we left here, and you could see it in her too. Like it's absolute. It's one of the most heartfelt, gut-wrenching little bits that I've ever seen. And he hits the nail right on the head. It's so true.
Dave usually does. And, yes, go over to his Facts of Fishing and have a look at that. I know I'm going to be doing that right after this. But until then, I am excited to be spending some time with my good friend, the Orca. And, of course, this next person. This next person that, as I said, we've had on before, but we're looking forward to finding out just a little bit more about Jeff, because he is an endearing guy and loved by all Canadians and some Americans, as long as he's not carrying trophies out of their backyard. But he did manage a solid tournament season this past year, Jim, as he managed to qualify for yet another Bassmaster Classic. Where is it being held this year?
I'm not sure where it is. I know they just announced it a little while ago. But, it's always because of the time of the year they hold it at, it's always a little further south. But it'll be a fantastic place. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I know I saw a press release. It just didn't stick in my head. I won't be there. But
well, without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Jeff Gustafson. How you doing tonight, Jeff?
I'm pretty good, boys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's totally our pleasure, Jeff, and thanks so much for spending a little bit of time with CFN. We are proud to be Canadian, and you make us proud to be Canadian anglers every time you get close to that podium, and especially when you manage to pull off one of those blue trophies. It truly is something.
Yeah, it made for a good year. It took the little pressure off, and it was a long time coming, but yeah, but like. You enjoy it when it happens, and then when the next tournament comes around, it's you're back to you're not the champ anymore. So, but yeah, it made for a good year, and you makes you want to get another one.
Well, speaking of getting one, let's take a step back. In late February, CFN celebrated with you as you endured some early season unpleasant weather and managed to pull out enough smallmouth from the Tennessee River to win the Knoxville Bassmaster Elite Series tournament. Let's take a second and I have a look back. I'm sure you don't get tired of seeing this.
Number one, he has led this wire to wire. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, hold it high. Oh, Canada! The Tennessee River gets peppered by the great Canadian snow leopard. Jeff Gustafson dominates the guaranteed rate Bassmaster Elite on the Tennessee River. Gussy gets it done and finishes in spot number one. And for the second time in as many years, the Big Blue Trophy goes north of the border. Let's hear it for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Jeff,
only Mercer could find a rhyme with leopard.
Yeah, I forgot about that one, but no, you know what? It was tough because, my wife wasn't there, my parents weren't there. I would have had a lot of my friends would have probably came down the way that event was going. Knoxville would have been an easy place to get to, and it just with a COVID and situation. Dave was kind of like my family that was there. Carl Jacobson lives 2 hours away. So him and Brandon Palaniuk actually came to the weigh-in on the last day. So that was cool. But right after that, the end of that clip, I went behind the stage and Dave gave me a big hug and just was, told me he was proud of me. And he's been a good friend. And, watching him do his thing on video does no justice for how good he is actually at what he does. So we're lucky to have him.
100%. As I said, one day it'd be great to have him on here. I know he would steal the show. Jim and I would literally just probably go off into another room and talk to ourselves because Dave would be able to run show. But yeah, I think, speaking of that tournament, I think Dave did his very best to explain to all of us and Bassmaster as well, just how incredible what it is you did. Not just about winning, but the fact that you went down there and targeted a fish that a lot of anglers down there don't target. Well,
that was by coincidence, and I got very lucky that I found this little needle in a haystack that I did. I mean, I didn't go there expecting to fish for smallmouth. I mean, anything you read about the event was there's no way it's going to get one with smallmouth. There's no way that anyone's going to get a limit of them in any particular day. There might be a few big ones that get caught, but I caught all my fish on the same a Smeltonator jig head and a Z-Man jerk shad, and I only had like 5 or 6 of the jigs when I got down there. And then once the tournament started, and I wasn't really losing that many, but I didn't have very many. I got a couple extra ones off Seth and a couple from Corey Johnston, and I mean that's just what I had. I mean, I didn't go there expecting to fish that way. It was just super tough fishing. I've told this story a bunch of times, but I've caught like 3 bass the first 2 days in practice, and 2 were in the first hour the first morning. And then I probably went like 12 hours of fishing before I caught another keeper. So, I mean, I had to look for something different and off the wall. And we always do that, but it doesn't always hit. And I got lucky on that one and hit big time. And, there was not, if no one else fished it, I mean, I could have caught a limit off there 10 days in a row, probably. It was just I found a couple little rock piles that they were really stacked up on.
Now, before I get to the question that's next, I think it's really important because I'm going to be asking it to you as well, Jim. all the smallmouth, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeff, but all the smallmouth had to be 18 inches or larger to weigh in to qualify. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So a tough, you know, adding to the already tough fishing, like, and, you know, yeah. So like I caught a lot of nice ones every day that were 17 and a half, 17 3/4, like close, like bigger fish than a lot of the ones that I actually weighed in. But
to think, like, I mean, I know I might not be speaking for a lot of the people here. Like, I see Colin, I see Sparkus, I see Steve, Enzo. I would say formidable anglers to be able to catch 20 over the course of this tourney to weigh in that were 18 inches plus. That's a feat in itself.
Yeah, they were long and skinny, these ones. So again, like a little luck there, because yeah, I mean, I could go out a lot of days here when the water's cold and they're grouped up and catch 100 fish every day, but to get all the over 18 inches would be a little challenging for sure. And,
well,
and it was there, but I mean, there was just enough quality fish around that it you know, the second day I got 4 of them fairly quick, and then it took me like till 1 in the afternoon before I finally got my 5th one. But the other 3 days it was I had my limit pretty easy.
Well, I wasn't the only one that was impressed by that. Rob is saying out in New Brunswick, 18 inches, a very big fish out there, 100%. But the folks at Bassmaster were pretty impressed as well. Just take a listen, folks.
Such an impressive feat.
You're that Canadian war hoop.
Well, he's probably caught more smallmouth in his 4 days of competition, him alone, than the other 99 pros in their 4 days of competition combined.
Yeah, well, I think like 99% of the smallmouths in that whole lake and river were in that canal. So, you know, I got really lucky. I mean, and other guys fished around there, but in practice, but like I launched my boat right there, and you idle out, and there was bait, there was nice rocks, the water was clear, it was just had all the ingredients, and yeah, it was my lucky week.
So as you had mentioned, they were all caught on this product right here. This is from Z-Man. And there's something cool about the jig head. Who is the manufacturer of the jig head, or where do you purchase it?
So the jig head comes from a tackle store here in Kenora, where I live, Kenora and Winnipeg, Lake of the Woods Sports headquarters. Brian Gustafson, a good buddy of mine, he designed it. He's probably had it for 5 or 6 years now. But it's got a really nice collar. It's the best jig head for fishing little, you know, small swim baits on as well. But it's really good for fishing these, you know, vertical minnow baits. And it's got a Gamakatsu 604 hook in it, a real strong, stout hook. That's important, and you know, real lifelike design. But it's a primo jig head. The Lake of the Woods Sports is where you get him. You know, there's going to be a bunch coming at some point here soon, but it's been like anything. He's had a tough time getting. Well, I don't know if the hooks are back ordered or just the guy that makes them for him makes jigs for a lot of people, and you know, they've been set back a little, but yeah, there'll be a new batch of them coming in soon.
So here's the question I have for the both of you, and Jeff, you've sort of touched on it already, but you know, Jim, I got to ask you as well. You've won enough in your day. When you managed to put something together like Jeff did, you went on a different path than all of the other anglers in a tournament. You take a chance, you know, you put your reputation out there, but you use your instincts. And when it all comes together, please try and explain, how does that feel as an angler? Go ahead, Jim.
Well, you know, I had something kind of like that happen many, many years ago when I won my second GM Pro Bass Classic, and I caught all the fish with crankbaits. And that was absolutely unheard of in, you know, 1990. That's like 31 years ago now. And I hawked out a bunch of largemouth. Jeff snickering. Were you born then?
Yeah, sadly.
But I hawked out a bunch of largemouths and on the crankbait, and then I caught a couple on a tube on the last day, and that's where the story we often talk about. When I caught the big smallmouth the last day, and I say the big smallmouth it wasn't even over 6. It was like 588 or something like that on a scale of 585. And people freaked. But now you catch a 6-pound smallmouth in Lake Simcoe. Oh, that's a nice one. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's where it comes. I mean, I had this fish and it was an absolute giant, and people freaked because they just didn't get them that big back then. But the thing was, I caught largemouths on weed lines like almost at will. It was like crazy. You get on it. Now, the second day they weren't as big, and I had some other places that I went and caught them. But, once again, and then I had to fall back on smallmouth, which I didn't think I would have to do. But it's just really, really cool when you see something that is so strong. And then I went back 2 weekends after and won the fall challenge, doing exactly the same thing, except all largemouths.
Wow.
They just, guys didn't fish crankbaits. Like, they didn't believe that I was catching fish on crankbaits.
Well, and I would have to say, Jeff, you were in the same kind of position. You introduced something that I have been doing for a number of years for walleye. I didn't realize there was a term for it. I'm glad Rob Nickerson put it up here. You moped your way to a win.
Well, yeah, and like down south, they call it a Demiki rig, which, I mean, we were doing that way before they started calling it that. So I'm never calling it that. I mean, I say that sometimes people down south know what I'm talking about, but the moping name, that actually came from Ron Linder around 2003, 2004. And he was a real unique guy and had a unique lingo. So there was a lot of little odd terms like that he kind of coined. But yeah, we call it hanging a minnow up here. I mean, that's what if you said that around any of my fishing buddies or anybody up in my part of the world, they'd know what you mean. But that's Lake of the Woods, Rainy Lake, a lot of our fisheries. That's how we catch a lot of fish, and it has been for the last 15 plus years from midsummer through the fall. And you're gonna see that technique and that bait that I used. You're gonna see that in the next year to 3 years be a player in a lot of tournaments, especially now. Like, everyone has the forward facing sonar. Like, I got the Humminbird Mega Live earlier in the summer, and I caught so many fish reeling that thing 3 or 4 feet above them, out in deep water. And you're gonna see guys doing that. Even when we were at Lake Champlain, I caught a lot of fish shallow in practice. That's how I was fishing. And then, the first day of the tournament, it kind of got cloudy and windy. And I ended up going over a couple deep places where I caught some fish last year, and I put a bag together. I had 20 pounds, and that's what I caught them all on. And the second day I caught them again. And the third day I missed a couple. I got denied by a few. I caught a couple big fish that were skinny. Little bit of bad luck. Otherwise, I mean, I'm looking back on this year, I actually should have had a pretty good chance to win that tournament, and I ended up in somewhere 12th or something like that. I just missed just a little short of making the final day, and it was too bad because I could have, the last day the weather was sort of back the way I wanted it for what I was doing there. But like at the Classic, I mean, I'm gonna push that bait pretty hard. If I can if I can find where to catch some on it, that's going to be a way that I want to fish for sure.
Totally understandable. But as I said, going back to the win on the Tennessee River, I know Jim and I talked about it on our live. I would again, and I'm not necessarily one that has the time to follow what goes on in the tournament trail, but I did when you were there, and for no other reason was because you totally went against the grain of what all other anglers were doing. And to be able to be successful in a situation like that, my Lord, I mean, it's no high five or heel click could ever come close to how you probably felt at that moment when it all came together for you. And I'm sure a lot of your colleagues were looking at you. Good for you, man. Way to go against the grain and look outside the box.
Yeah, and you got to do that. I mean, you look back at the way most of our Elite Series tournaments are won. It's probably 50-50 on the traditional technique that you think is going to win at each venue, and then somebody doing something totally off the wall. I mean, you look at what Walters did last year at Lake Fork. He's catching him on a jerk bait and standing timber with his sonar, right? Live sonar. That was, nobody even no one else figured that out. Like, but these guys do that stuff all the time, and I mean that's usually what you got to do to win. And then, you know, some of the, you know, you go to some places, you know, it's going to be a ledge fishing event, and that's how it's going to get won. And there's any number of baits you can catch them on. But since I've been like doing this, I mean, I've seen a lot of cool things kind of come and been taking the beatings because I wasn't on the, you know, inside edge of, you know, whether it was the big flutter spoons or bucktail jigs. I don't know. There's been a lot of cool stuff that you know, and that's what's cool about the guys fishing at that level. I mean, they cook up some cool ways to catch fish, and that's part of the fun of you know, watching how it goes on. And Bassmaster does a pretty good job of sharing that information with you. I mean, you start watching those guys doing it, you know, or, you know, watching the Bass Live show, and it's hard to quit watching it. You know, you just learn so much. And but yeah, it was cool. I mean, I wish, looking back now, I probably could have been more excited on some of those catches, you know, especially at the end. But it was you know, I'd led a couple times in other events going into the last day and never ended up getting it done. So you never know. And it was just like, I knew when I got my limit, I did it, but you know, you still had to get back. And I just, it was more just like relieving than anything. And, but yeah, I watched some of the footage after, and you know, I wish I probably could have been a little bit more excited maybe, but I was.
We were excited for you, Jeff. No worries. But really, you know, I'm taken aback too as an angler. Before we get to Jim's question, how you have to be able to adapt. You know, being up here, especially where you are in the north, Lake of the Woods, it's a whole different type of fishing down there because it's all reservoirs, right? And it's all timber, it's all standing timber, it's all docks. Is it a completely different style of fishing than what you're used to up here?
Not really. I mean, yeah, like we don't have shad, we don't have reservoirs really, so some of that stuff's different. Like I would say for anyone that's, you know, when you go down south and start fishing, you gotta kind of have some understanding of what like shad kind of dictate what all these bass do. But at the end of the day, and I mean, you look at like Chris and Corey too, like all of us are kind of, and the guys from Minnesota, I mean, the guys up north, we are sort of lucky in that we are versatile. I mean, we get to grow up fishing grass, fishing deep, fishing clear water, fishing some current. You know, we have a lot of, we get to learn a lot of the basics and a lot of the, you know, general things that you need to know. And then it becomes, you know, being able to make good decisions, you know, based on the conditions every day that you're fishing. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You know, I always save all my waypoints wherever you know, when I go to a place for a week, you have a bunch of waypoints at the end of the week. And I pretty much now have SD cards for specific lakes or, you know, for a state or for the Tennessee River, that sort of thing. And it's funny, like up north, like in up north in general, like a good spot is a good spot year after year, unless it just gets overfished by too many people find out about it and fish it. But like down there, very rarely will I ever go, like when we go back, because I've been to a lot of these lakes now 3, 4, 5 times. Very rarely do you catch them on the same places like year after year. And it's just the water levels change a little bit, the water clarity changes a bit, the bait's in different places, and it's not as much like this is just like a good wintering spot for smallmouths every year. They're going to start showing up there early in the fall, and just more and more are going to come as we go. It's just, it seems like it's a little different down there.
Right on. You're up, Jim. Go ahead, bud.
Hey, buddy. Everybody hears us talk about, you know, we talk about all the time. We're always talking about fish and fluff because of you and Corey and a few of the other guys and Seth and those guys. Walk us through what you use and exactly what the major presentation with it is. I have so many people that contact me. They want to buy some of this, you know, like, I want to buy some fluff from you. That's what they, you know, they got, like, they don't really know a lot about it. And I always send them to Bassmasters to read the things they've written about you. And then they tell me, oh, I want them to be half ounce because I fish in deep water. I've had a few guys, you know, like they want really, really deep stuff. And I try to explain to them that the real deadly thing is the sight fishing, the shallow water. Can you go through all this for us?
Yeah, I mean, it would take an hour to go go through everything, but like the general rules that everyone needs to know. An 1/8 ounce is extremely heavy. Like I might tie an 1/8 ounce on a couple times a year. I carry some. I always have them because I don't burn them up. I use a 3/32 a lot if I'm fishing fast and if I'm on like the Great Lakes, and then around home, it's a lot of like specific. You know, casting at a clump of cabbage, a boulder, a log, a fish that I see cruising. Then I'm using a 1/16 ounce. So you never want the jig to touch the bottom. That's #1 rule. 8-pound Power Pro, 8-pound fluoro leader. A 90-degree jig is important, not like a 60-degree. You want a 90-degree jig. It swims better. It hooks them way better. You know, rod's important. You know, I'm using G. Loomis rods, very lucky there, and the NRX Plus, but the IMX Pros are really nice too. You want a 7.6, you know, medium light action rod. I'm using a 901 or a 902, I mean, it's a really good bait for shallow water. It's not designed. It's not a. There's way better baits for fishing deep, but for like 10 or 12 feet and less, fish, if you can see them, you know, they're cruising around up shallow and they're sort of hard to catch. I mean, that's where it shines. And I mean, we've sort of spilled the beans on everything with those jigs. And, but it's for people that haven't, you know, had success with them. You just got to go out in the summer one day on a nice day when the fishing's good and don't fish with anything else. And once you like figure out the little nuances with it and catch a few fish with it, it's your best friend. I mean, it's a deadly bait.
That's so cool that you would say that about going out and doing with it. One of the last things I said to Scotty the other night about crankbait fishing, how did I get good at crankbait fishing? Because that's what I brought in the boat.
Yeah.
I didn't bring anything else. I spent days and days with, you know, 2 or 3 different rod setups, different actions and things. I had all kinds of different things. And if you want to learn to do something, as you know, Jeff, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And you have to do it a lot to get really, really good at it. Something I gotta show a picture here. And this is really cool because we were out a couple of years ago there down in the St. Lawrence. One of the things I noticed about that, I don't know what the color, see I don't know whether it's going to catch it.
The yellow line?
The yellow line. Now that absolutely shocked me when I saw you fishing with yellow line, especially in a place like the St. Lawrence, and yet you're still hawking them out at will. So do you really think that line is the big deal? Like I've often said, we'd be in trouble if fish knew what fishing line was, but they don't. So when they see it, what do they really think? But yet we're also concerned about trying to cover it up, put on a fluorocarbon leader. You know, if you ask most guys what color they wanted for life, they'd say black. So what do? We take a black marker and we black out the first 6 feet of the line that's a different color, you know, and make it our favorite color. Like we're not all so sharp at times, I think. But what's your thoughts on braided line in general? Obviously, you use Power Pro, but that really you know, like obviously easy to see line.
Yeah. So yellow. I mean, anyone that like follows me at all, and you see pictures of any of my spinning reels, 100% have yellow regular Power Pro on it. I sometimes you'll see some of the other colors here and there, but 99% of all my spinning reels out in my shop right now all have 8 or 10 pound regular yellow Power Pro. I think it's the best braid. It's bulletproof, very reliable, and I couldn't tell you one circumstance where I think would be appropriate to put straight fluoro or mono on a spinning rod. I mean, for me, for what I do, I'm not saying you can't go. I caught thousands of fish growing up with 8-pound mono on my spinning rods, but anymore, I mean, the braid is it lasts so much longer. It doesn't twist as easy. It has no memory. I mean, and then the sensitivity to feel bites, to feel what your bait's doing. I mean, I can feel if my Ned rig has a little kink in it, I can feel it with the braid. Whereas the mono, like if you're in 20 feet of water, I mean, you don't even feel a bite hardly. And I can feel a fish breathe on my bait. And then I always put a leader on 100% of the time. You know, 8 or 10 foot leader, and that, you know, is usually 8's as light as I go, and normally I have a 10 or 12 pound leader. I mean, I'm sure there's been times where like I probably should have had 6 on and I got my butt whipped, but I mean, I can't afford to lose fish, break them off, fight them for too long and lose them. I mean, I need to catch them, and a 10-pound leader, like that's usually what I use on my Ned rigs, tubes, little swimmers, sometimes 8, like, but normally 8's going on the drop shot and the hair jig and the spy bait. And I know there's probably lots of people that are like, that's unreal. I can't, you know, I've used 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, you know, like a really light line, but I've done it. I've tried it, and it just doesn't work for me to break a fish off. And I want to use, like, I use a stronger hook most of the time. I mean, most of the jigs I use, I have them made. I get the hooks I want and get my Ned rigs, Ned jigs, and football heads and tube heads made with a little bit heavier, usually that Gamakatsu 604 hook. And I want to, you know, catch them and reel them in. You watch Bass Live, and I'm not going to like say any names, but the guys that sit there like, you know, like babying the fish when they fight them, half the time they get off. If the guys that like, when they come in the boat, I mean, they come in, I lose more fish in team tournaments at home where we use a net than I do like in those elite events where we got to put them in the boat, like without a net. And I boat flip everything up to, like, that I feel like I can based on my line and the hook that I'm using. And if not, I go to the back corner of the boat and bare palm, and they're coming in the boat. But there's not a lot of like loosening my drag off and letting them, you know, there's that situation happens here and there, but generally it's I try to give them as much lumber as I can based on what my bait is.
Well, Jem tells us all the time, you know, let the rod do the fighting. That's what it's there for. That's what it's designed. Now, listen, no doubt winning an Elite Series tourney is a big deal. It would be for any of us, but a close second. And please help me out here, Jeff, or we're both going to be in trouble. Winning the Crow Lake Classic with your wife. Tell me, what's it like being able to do that with your wife in a club tournament like that?
Points.
Well, the next time we do this, we'll do it out in my shop because I have all my like little trophies and things out there, my fishing gear. But just with we're getting some nasty weather here, so I didn't want to. I would have had some internet issues, I think, out there. But it was the second year in a row that we won this tournament, and it's at a lake about an hour and a half south of our house. Beautiful trout lake, real deep, clear water, and we usually go practice for like 2 days right before, and we fished it, I think, 4, maybe 5 times. I think 4 times, and we've figured a couple things out the last few years and we ended up winning the tournament and had a couple of really good days of fishing. So all good. Yeah, it was awesome. A lot of fun.
With obviously the tournament season running to an end, and there's that changeover. In you know, with Mike, I'm just thinking of Mike Iaconelli right about now. But to save a moose, you know, go fish a bass, or you know, the poor guy in the back would have probably lived a little bit longer. What do you do in the off season? Like, what does a Jeff Gustafson start doing this time of year?
So the last few weeks have actually been really busy. I fished 5 weekends of tournaments in a row from like through September through like the middle of October, and then we've been done with that for a few weeks. But I had a few guide trips, you know, like sponsor commitments that I had to do, and then just like the last couple of weeks, a lot of getting year-end reports done, like sponsorship stuff for next year lined up. I sold my boat, so that a friend of mine bought it. He came and got it this morning, so I spent the last couple of days kind of cleaning that up and getting that ready to go. We went out and caught a couple bass this morning, just sort of showed them, you know, all the things on the boat. But I'm pretty well done with fishing now. I have a tiller boat that I'm going to keep, you know, ready to roll. Maybe next week if we're supposed to get 1 or 2 days next week where it's going to get back up above freezing, and maybe I'll go out musky fishing. But we're just about done. And yeah, I'll do a little bit of hunting now. But yeah, just kind of, it's been really like go since January when I went to Florida. And so now we got a couple months where it's a little bit quieter. I go on a moose hunting trip a couple hours north of here with my friends every year in December. We always go the last week of the season, sort of mid-December. Yeah, just I spend a lot of time outdoors, and I live that's partly why I live where I do. It's not the most convenient place for my job and all the traveling that we do, but the summers are beautiful up here, and we like being where we're at.
Got a question from the audience. Rob Nickerson out in New Brunswick is asking, he's just curious why you chose aluminum over fiberglass.
So yeah, I mean, like for sure there's advantages to the fiberglass, especially for, you know, straight tournament fishing. But I've kind of grown up in Lund country, so I've run a Lund for like 15 years, and they're, you know, awesome people, great company. They make a great product, and I mean, there's not many days at all really where I'm at any disadvantage. I mean, I have a huge deck, a ton of storage. The boat's pretty fast. It's, you know, maybe a couple mile an hour slower than, you know, Chris and Corey go about 2 miles an hour faster than me, so it's not much. And you know, just a great boat to fish out of. So I'm very fortunate that that Lund is, you know, helped me out, and I've been able to help put some 2 cents in on this bass boat that they've had now for like 5 years, and they've been good. They're selling a lot of them. So yeah, I'm lucky, very lucky there as far as, you know, a lot of these guys that I fish against don't get the same you know, help on their boats and have the support that they do that I get from Lund. So yeah, I'm unless they fire me, I'll be fishing in that for the rest of my life in one of those boats.
Well, Jim says it too all the time. Even if Shimano were to drop him at some point, he'll always fish with Shimano because he just believes in the product. So a great segue to ask both of you, you know, what's it like now that you've explained what it's like to be a customer and a pro staff for Lund Boats? How is it for Shimano?
That's to me, Scotty?
Sure.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, I remember going to Tom Brook, who was a vice president many, many years ago at the Toronto Sportsman Show or the Ottawa Sportsman Show. And I said to Tom, I said, can I take you to the side and have a chat with you? And he goes, yeah, come on. He puts his arm around me and we go over to the side. And I said, I really want to be on the Shimano pro staff. I said, I'm trying to get going into fishing in the industry. I want to fish tournaments eventually. And I just sort of got the impression that he was, yeah, okay, like just pat me on the back, you know, whatever, eh? And I told him I really wanted to be on the pro staff, and because I had been doing a lot of fishing, and I just thought something was happening. I was catching a lot of fish. I was listening. I was reading a magazine called Fishing Facts, and I read some stuff by this guy called Al Lindner, and it all started to stick in my head about it and everything else. And I looked at him and I said, you know, you really need to get me now because I want to be in the fishing industry and I'm going to have to go elsewhere. And he looked at me and he said, well, okay then, just like, you know. And then we went fishing it was in the spring. He came and he fished with me one day. He brought I'd never been in a bass boat, and he brought a big bass boat over. You've heard my story about Clayton Lake, never having used the trim on a boat and everything and all that. And he you know, he comes there and he says to me, and, you know, we go out and we fish, and I don't know, we caught a bunch of fish, but I literally, I had one of those dream things in front of somebody where you just absolutely, it all just happens and you just whack the crap out of them. And that was, he came to me after, and then he came into Ottawa to one of the dealers here, the boat dealers, and said, you need to get this guy a boat and let him fish tournaments. And that was in 1987.
Wow.
And the first year I fished in GM Pro Bass, I think it was, what was it called back then? It would have been OB Pro Bass back then. And the first year that I qualified, I won the classic. And, you know, you never look back, eh? So it's one of those, you know, one of those things. But I just, you know, I'm coming up on, going to be doing up my 39th year with Shimano here shortly. We've already had a good discussion about it with marketing and everything and what's going to happen. And man, that's the, you know, to get to 40, you know, God, who knows? I'm coming up to 70. Maybe I make it to 80 and get in 50 years at the same company and just salt that once and for all.
Well, we'll have to do more of these to solidify that, Jim. But Jeff, you know, I'm sure I sit here like you, and we look at folks like Jim who have been, you know, with Shimano for as long as he has been a pro staff, has really been a huge part of where they've gone with their product line, how they've, you know, catered to anglers. I know with CFN, they certainly catered to our type of angler that, you know, can afford some of the entry-level products, but still get that technological advancement when you're using Shimano. And we get a taste of some of the cool stuff that you folks get to use. But I know your favorite rod is the NRX, hands down. Tell us what it's like to be a pro staffer for Shimano.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, feel really lucky every day. And I've, you know, back when I was 15 or 16 years old, I started, you know, I was, even at that age, I was really, the fishing in these tournaments around home was like the highlight of the summer. It was what I lived for, and started to have a little bit of success. And the rep for our area, Brad Harlow's, he was the first one that kind of helped me out a little bit. And I got a relationship with Shimano, and that's, you know, like, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so they've been supportive of my career ever since. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as, there's no question, like, the high end stuff is the best on the market, I think, you know, for sure, on the high end reels. And then the NRX rods, like, hey, the NRX rod and, you know, the Stella or the Accents and some of these high end, you know, the high end stuff, I understand, like, that's not for everybody. But if you do it for a living, like I do, if you're a guide, tournament fishing, I mean, and you can have the best stuff, you want to have the best stuff. So it you know, yeah, it's top notch. And I'm really, really lucky that every day that that's the equipment that I get to use.
Yes.
I heard a little story that when you were in Tennessee, in Knoxville, that the rod that you won that tournament on was an NRX Plus, but you couldn't talk about it yet.
That's kind of how it went, but I actually, I had one sample, like, because the rod came out around the Classic, like in May, it got released. So in January, I went down. I usually like to go down to Florida. That's always where our season starts. Like 1 year out of 9, or this might be my 10th year coming up. We started in Alabama, I think, but otherwise we always start in Florida. So I like to go down there and usually get a week to 10 days of fun fishing in. And by like late January, it's full winter around here. So we're ready to get out of here and go get back in the boat again. And I did they have a really good photographer that I spent a day with down in Florida, and we had one casting NRX Plus and one spinning. So the photographer spent a day with me. We photographed both rods, just me fishing, and didn't really catch many that day. We went to a lake that small lake I'd done good at in the past, and we just kind of had a mediocre day, but got a bunch of photos. And then he went with Josh Douglas the next day, who a Minnesota guy. He just qualified for the Elite Series for this coming season, so that's awesome. But he went with him for a day, so Josh got to keep the casting rod, and I kept the spinning rod. And so we go to Knoxville, and I mean, again, as I said earlier, I mean, I didn't go there expecting to fish that way, and I didn't have a lot of spinning gear with me. Just the early part of our schedule, I mean, it was going to be all hardware, you know, like heavy gear. So I didn't have that many spinning rods with me, a few. But the first day I caught all 5 fish on that. I mean, those rods are so nice. And the one I had was an 852. I mean, just the perfect rod for the technique that I was using. And I caught all my fish on it. Get in that night, and I'm driving back to the house, and Bob Mahoney calls for, you know, my man at Shimano, and G Loomis, and I mean, he's like one of my, you know, really good friend, and he calls me, and you know, he always does, good days or bad days, and you know, good job. You might not be able to use that rod tomorrow. Like I know it killed him to say that to me, and I was like, dude, and I'm like F-bombing him. I think, like, there's not a freaking chance that I'm not using that rod tomorrow. And we talked for a minute, and I just like changed the subject. See you later. Well, like a couple hours later, he calls me back and he's like, "Bud, if you have a couple other rods, please don't use that rod tomorrow. You're gonna be up Bass Live." And I'm like, dude, like no one's gonna know. I mean, I'm, you know, like I'll keep it, I'll hide it, you know, and nah, just don't use it. And okay, so I didn't, and I mean, I had some other rods that were, it was fine. It wasn't like, but the rods are just so nice. I wanted to, you know, it was a pleasure to fish with, and I had the same rod in the regular NRX, you know, so it was very similar. It was still beautiful. I had, you know.
What a great story. That's a great. Jim, you ever had one of those awkward conversations with our good buddy Bob?
Not really.
No,
not really. I've been lucky.
So you've obviously been you know, watching your P's and Q's. Good for you. I got to learn again. He's my mentor, so I got to learn from him. But you did mention ice fishing, Jeff, and you know, as hard water season is quickly coming, and of course it'll be in your neck of the woods
tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. Obviously, you know, I took this from your page. These are some of your go-tos. I think more so for perch. You like your buckshot, but you love your IMX Pro ice fishing G Loomis rods. If this was your go-to for perch, I'm going to start on a bit of a rapid fire for both of you. I'm going to set it up so that both of you can answer this at the same time. We're going to go through some of the fish that you would be pulling through the hard water. If you had a go-to for walleye, your setup and go-to for walleye, Jeff, what is it?
Those are actually my walleye rods. A 1/4 ounce buckshot rattle spoon if I'm under 25 feet, 3/8 if I'm deeper than 25. And then, you know, there's some other spoons that I'm a spoon guy. And then, yeah, the IMX Pro rods or ice rods are finest ice rods you can get. I mean, super light, sensitive, like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Jim, your favorite setup and go-to bait?
I'd probably be using something in that, I don't know, like a 6 to 10 pound test, medium heavyish on that, and a Jackal TN50. I've just caught so many fish on those little baits, on rattle baits. It's really funny. I saw somebody had a poll up today. Do you use rattle baits ice fishing? You know, like yes or no. And so I clicked yes on it. I saw it go by there. I was sitting waiting for Tammy, and I clicked yes on it. And then it gives you the score after, and the score was like 30 to 70. 70% of the people said they don't use rattle baits to ice fish.
Wow!
And I sort of thought, what? You know? And then I went back and looked at it after because I thought I got it the wrong way. But I was thinking about it. I thought, oh, you're old, you know, older than you think you are. You better go check that. You were seeing it backwards, and I think at the time then it had changed to like. You know, like it was actually up to like 73% of the people that had voted said that they didn't use rattle baits. And man, Jeff, you use them?
A little bit, but not a ton. But I think it's just sort of where you're at. Like I know you go over to Lake Winnipeg, and that's what everyone's using for walleyes. A lot of people are for the big walleyes, but I've caught everything on them here on Lake of the Woods, and I think it's just more a function of I've just caught thousands and thousands of walleyes on those buckshot spoons. I tip them with a frozen shiner head usually. Never use meat for walleyes anymore in open water. I mean, it's just all seaman plastic. But I do use a minnow head on those spoons. But yeah, that TN50 is a really good bait. I've caught like everything on them: lake trout, whitefish, walleyes.
Well, I mean, like that buckshot spoon. I mean, that's probably the most famous walleye lure that exists. You know, and I mean, you know, you work with Northland, and you know, it's one of those.
I think I drive those guys nuts a bit because like they come out with a new spoon every other year, kind of, and you know, something a little different, and like they'll come up like some guy that usually get a little crew from Northland come up in March to go ice fish for a few days. We've got phenomenal ice fishing around Lake of the Woods, and I think it drives those guys nuts because they want to come and test some of these new baits. And like, I just love to catch fish so much. I hate, like, if I know something works, like, why would I use something different? You know what I mean? I do. I mean, if I get on a good bass bite, I do like to experiment and see what I'll push the limits on. Like, okay, they'll bite a 3-inch swim bait. Will they bite a 4-inch swim bait or a 5-inch swim bait, or will they bite a crankbait instead? Like, I do like to do that, but with the ice fishing, I mean, I want to go catch everything, and but I think I might have made a comment on that post with those ice baits and the rods about perch, but every perch will bite those, that I want to catch up here will bite those spoons as well.
Now, Jim, I'll go to you because I know you love your panfish, especially bluegill. What's your favorite setup for bluegill?
Oh, something like 3-pound fluorocarbon, maybe 5-pound Power Pro with a fluorocarbon leader, and once again, I like to use little swim jigs like the jig and wrap or a puppet minnow, little things like that. I like little minnow type baits. I just seem to do well, and then seem to get caught on. And then of course there's a lot of stuff out there, all the little plastic tails, like we were talking last week about the True North stuff there, Jamie's stuff he started making. It's got some really nice little baits out there. I'm sure they're gonna just absolutely, yeah.
Go on. He sent me a sampler pack earlier this fall with a bunch of his baits, and I caught a bunch of fish on them last week.
You got that one little one, the mayfly, the one with the 3 little balls on the tails. You watch that thing in the water. You put that
bait for sure.
Yeah, you put that in the bathtub. Well, I've heard you put that in the bathtub and you jiggle it and have a look at it. It's just all over the place on the tail because of the.
I didn't do that, but I dropped it on a bunch of smallmouths I could see on my Mega Live, and it didn't last very long down there.
They ate it right away. Yeah, there's something else I noticed. There's such a movement to guys. I was talking with a guy, texted a couple of times or messaged a couple of times with a guy today. Great Lakes baits or Great Lake finesse or something it's called, and they make all these little 1 and 2 inch, and their specialty as anglers is catching these big smallmouths in the Great Lakes with baits that are 2 inches or less, fishing all this. They've got the imitations of all the big baits that we use, the 3-inch, 3.5, 4-inch stuff, but they've got it's little, things the size of 1 digit on your finger, and they're fishing on little weenie heads. And these guys are just cracking them. I think there's a bit of a movement with so many people making plastic now. There's a movement where they can get whatever they want. Some of this stuff is just really cool. Really
100%. I know you love your crappie, Jeff. What's your go-to when it goes to targeting them?
On the ice, same deal. I mean, I'm going to use a spoon just because, if you can find them where they're not beat up, pressured, they're usually really easy to catch. And a little Northland Doodlebug 1/8-ounce spoon. Put a couple little plastic scented, maggot kind of things on there, and that's it. You get on some where they're finicky. You got to finesse them a little bit. Then I'm going to use a little. Northland has some little tungsten panfish jigs, just with a some kind of little bug on it, plastic bug, and sometimes you got to finesse them. I always have a few with me, but generally, just a little spoon. Most of our crappies go out in the deeper basins up here in the winter. So we're fishing 20 on the shallow end to, often 28, 35 feet of water. So you want a bait that's going to get down there a bit. And,
Right on. I also know you like to target your Lakers. What's your go-to setup for those?
Lakers. Same deal as my bass that I won that bait that I won the bass tournament with. Just the 4-inch Z-Man jerk shad. The jerk shads are scented. They got Procure scent in the packages, and that stuff's real sticky and just sticks to the Elastec on that Smeltinator jig. It's a good jig head because it's got a strong hook. A lot of these lake trout that we're catching are 10, 12, 15, up to 20 pounds. They fight hard, so you gotta. You want to have a good hook. Some of the water that we fish up here, you got to fish barbless for them as well. So even more reason to use a strong hook that's not going to open up, when you're fighting the fish. But yeah, they're the heaviest IMX Pro ice rod in that lineup. I think it's
It wouldn't be one of those. Yeah, it wouldn't be one of those. I don't think, Jeff.
390. I think it's a 393.
Okay, it might be. You have there on the end at 392.
Yeah,
That'd be close.
yeah.
Jim, I know it's been a while since perhaps maybe you've gone out and fished Lakers on the hard water, but what was your go-to back in the day?
Like Jeff said, I still have left that I was using. It was a bait that Kayla's used to make called a super floozy. It was a hand poured soft plastic bait. I think it's to this day it was the best soft fluke type bait that was ever made. It was hand poured and cured, and it was just an incredible bait. I used to use those, and we just rig them on the ball head because that's what we had back then. We didn't have all these really nice jig heads. I used to pour a lot of my own stuff, and we'd get Gamakatsu hooks, and we'd be scared, or VMC or something, and we'd be scared to lose the jig heads because of how much the hooks cost. You didn't care about the plastic. You had lots of that, but the hooks were just ridiculously expensive. But now the anglers they don't want plain old hooks in their jigs now. They don't mind paying that extra 50 cents or $1 on a jig to get something that they know is going to hold up and be a real quality. But there was that, and then one of my old favorites too was the old Fergie Special from Real Bait. I still use those. I used them 2 years ago. Last time I got the Quinny, and 45 seconds after I started, I looked down, I looked at the flasher, went, oh, there's one. I dropped it down. I popped it a couple of times, shook it, lifted it, dropped it, held it still, right in, ate it. Wow. So it's something that I learned how to use and catch fish with, and that's just like Jeff. There's things that he has that he knows how to catch fish with, and he knows that they work. And everybody has their favorites like that. And then I think in the end, it's all about your application and where you do it. There's so much more to it than just having a lure. In recent years, I've spent so much time explaining to people. We spend too much time looking at a lure, saying this is the best lure when we've got electronics. We need to learn more about fish. There's so many other things that are so much more important than that lure. And I say that because, all the guys from all the companies, they're all catching fish with what they use. And it's like giving, 5-inch stick baits from 20 different companies. Across the board, there's differences. Some of them do different things, but on given days, they're all the same. And I think that's what you really need to look at. But everybody still has their favorite things.
Yeah, no, 100%. I read in your testimonial section, Jeff, on your website, Jeff Gustafson Outdoors, that you spent a little bit of time out on the hard water with Tim Allard. And Tim has been with us. And I'll tell you, man, does he know ice fishing. But, what happens when two gurus like you get together in a hut? Like, does the ice start to melt? I can't imagine. Like, am I the only one that would love to be a bug on the wall? Because I'm sure there was a whole bunch of never tell secrets shared and a whole bunch of other stuff. But getting out on the hard water with a guy like Tim, I could just imagine some of the knowledge that the two of you passed back and forth to one another.
So it's probably been around 10 years ago now but he came up here in preparation for, he put a really nice book together on ice fishing and had a lot of great photos in it, covered like every topic you could imagine almost. So Tim came up and I think spent at least 4 or 5 days up here. And I had a crew of buddies that were up for fishing. I think we had some guys here from Northland. We had an art director from In Fisherman, like a photo guy from In Fisherman here taking photos as well that week. It was like in late March, the absolute best time to come up and fish, this part of the world. And I remember that one of the guys from In Fish caught a 48-inch muskie through the ice when we were crappie fishing. Like, that's the only muskie I've ever seen come up a hole in the ice. And that happened on that trip. But we caught big pike, big walleyes, crappies. I mean, everything. It was just a fun week. And it was just, hardcore fishing for 4 or 5 days.
Awesome. Well, Jim, we've had Jeff for almost an hour. Have you got any last questions that you want to ask him before we wrap this up?
I don't ask him. I just want to say I wrote this down. I've been saving it to say to him until the end. He got off when he won that tournament. He got off the best line ever on the stage after they told him he won. He was looking around and he said, "Where's the trophy?" And that is still That made my day, buddy. Where's the trophy?
Yeah. No, the trophy's beautiful. I actually was at an ice fishing show in Winnipeg on the weekend, and
oh, I saw some of that. Yeah.
I didn't bring it with me, but a lot of people were asking about it, wanted to see it, and it's pretty neat. It's beautiful. But my wife had to come up to Winnipeg on Sunday morning, so she brought it up and brought it into the show, and it was pretty neat. Everyone got to see it. But yeah,
posing with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pictures with it. So pretty neat. Obviously, I never picked one up. Last year, Chris Johnston won the year before, and we were on 2 back-to-back tournaments that stretch at St. Lawrence, and then we went right to Champlain. So Corey, Seth, and I got to Champlain, earlier on Sunday, and Chris won the tournament Sunday night. And normally we all would have just hung around and enjoyed it with him, but we just, we had to drive up the road. So he showed up later that night, and we all had a couple beers together, and it was cool. But he left that trophy. We had a little cabin rented for the week, and he left that trophy on the kitchen table, and we all got to walk by it and admire it, but I don't think any of us touched it or anything. And so yeah, getting to pick it up and touch it was awesome. Yeah, highlight of the year, fishing wise for me, for sure.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on qualifying for next year's classic. Where is it going to be, Jeff?
It's at Lake Hartwell, South Carolina. So it's a lake I've had some good history at, and yeah, I'm like super excited for it. I can't wait. We got 2 tournaments in Florida. I got to get through before the classic, but yeah, it's gonna be a fun one.
Last question for you. When it comes to any baits, I mean, obviously we talk about technology and new advancements. Is there anything that you're looking forward to using next year that you saw this year that was a modification of something new or perhaps something old?
Bait wise, I mean, I don't know. Nothing comes to mind, but the one thing I will say, like, I got the Mega Live earlier in the summer and had a year of messing with that. And like, all I can say, and I've used this analogy on a couple interviews and things in the past, I used it in a seminar on the weekend, but like, not having the forward facing sonar, whatever brand it is, I love Humminbird stuff, but I would rather sit at home and watch The Bachelorette with my wife, it's one of her favorite shows, than go fishing. And that's sad to say if I didn't have that on my boat, but it's so fun to use. You're gonna catch twice as many fish as you would without it, and you just see how the fish react to your bait. You see if they're on your spot. I mean, it's just incredible. I hate it, but like, if you haven't used it and you ice fish, you'll get this. But like, it's like going ice fishing without a flasher. Like, I would rather just sit next to my buddy and watch him fish than ice fish without being able to see what my bait's doing, see where it is in the water column, see if there's fish down there, and that's where we're at. So I'm just, really excited to have it for like a full season, and I learned a lot with it, the last month or two fishing around home this fall, and so that's going to be a big part of any success that I have next year for sure. And the way I like to fish, it's helpful. I mean, I love to fish offshore, get off the bank, fish a little bit deeper water if I can, and that's my strength. So that's the biggest thing I took out of this past season. That's awesome.
Well, Jim, Jeff, on behalf of all of us here at CFN, thanks so much for spending an hour with us on a Wednesday night when you're about to have to go out and shovel a whole bunch of snow, but it means a lot. We learned
watch The Bachelorette. I can't believe you said that in public.
It was on last night, bud. It's already been on this week. So
get the shovels, thank God. Get the shovels.
That's awesome. Well, gents, as always, thanks so much for coming and spending a little bit of time with us, and of course some knowledge that we just wouldn't get unless we were able to talk to you. In the ending here, I can't think of a better way to leave this, but revisiting our good friend Gussy's win on the Tennessee River.
Number 1, he has led this wire to wire. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, hold it high. Canada. The Tennessee River gets peppered by the Great Canadian Snow Leopard. Jeff Gustafson dominates the guaranteed rate Bassmaster Elite on the Tennessee River. Gussy gets it done and finishes in spot number 1. And for the second time in as many years, the Big Blue Trophy goes north of the border. Let's hear it for him, ladies and gentlemen.
And I'll leave you with a word from our sponsor. Thanks again, Jeff. Thanks again, Jim. We'll talk to you guys real soon.
Guys. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Right on.
Honoring past achievements as we step into the future. Elevate, innovate, reimagine. Make the best better. That's what we do. Radically redefined, the NRX Plus is the culmination of our obsessive drive to forge the most advanced fishing tools on the planet.